Hello and welcome to episode number 243. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com and I am Cornelius Fichtner. Nice to have you with us. If you want to know what the best way is for you to manage, say, cost, time, resources or quality on your project, then you can open the PMBOK guide or you can turn to any of a dozen project management methodologies out there and they will guide you. But what about the best way for you as a project manager to be productive and organized? Where can that be found? Personally, I don't recall a single project management methodology or framework that addresses your or my work style and gives us the tools to improve. To discuss one possible approach, we welcome Brian Fee to the program, who says that having a personal set strategy for collecting, processing, organizing, and reviewing information has helped him as a project manager. He believes that it is a worthwhile exercise for other project managers as well to consider their own strategy for staying organized. This is because there is an assumed level of competency that we project managers are expected to just have in terms of personal productivity, and it never seems to be directly taught or addressed in the educational process. We are expected to be able to handle a tremendous onslaught of incoming information effectively and also be able to perform processes and manage projects. Brian believes that many project managers and other professionals too feel a great deal of stress juggling the information that they receive through email, voicemail, hallway conversations or meetings. This is his personal experience and many of his recommendations that will help inspire you and set you off on the right track to improving your own personal productivity. So close your email program, turn off your cell phone, and enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Brian Fee of Brian Project Services.
Hello, Brian. Welcome to the Project Management Podcast.
Hi, Cornelius. Thank you for having me.
Let us begin our interview with the end in mind, because we're going to be talking about personal productivity and personal organization. Let's see how the approach for productivity and personal organization that we're going to discuss will help our listeners. First of all, how will it help them personally?
Well, I think that at the heart of the method that I like, it really does help them personally by giving project managers a level of predictability and stress-free productivity. That's really the selling point of the method that I like to use. It's the art of stress-free productivity. So it gives the project manager the ability to perform tasks in a repeatable, predictable manner without a lot of stress. And I think that's the main benefit of this method of productivity.
And how will that help them on their projects?
I consider it especially helpful in applying project integration management processes. We have so much information that we have to take in on a daily basis, and it comes from emails, comes from phone calls, voicemails. It comes in the hallway on the way to the water cooler from stakeholders who have some new information that they want to give to you. And this method of productivity involves being able to be in control of all of your inputs. And so, especially when gathering requirements and managing change, being able to have a productivity method that's personal and repeatable is a great benefit, and it's the kind of, I call it the glue that kind of holds together the application of processes within a project.
All right. So that's what we want our listeners to be able to do. That's where we want to get them. But now let's go back to the very beginning and see how this all started for you. What was your work style like in the old days? before you used this approach, and how did that affect your productivity?
Well, in the old days, I noticed that I had to collect a lot of information and process a lot of information, but I don't know if I ever did it the same way twice. Someone would tell me a piece of information or give me a phone number, and I would grab the pen that was nearest and the pad that was closest, and I'd write them down, and I'd put them in one place one time, and then the next time I'd grab a different pen and a different piece of paper and do something completely different with it. And I found that I was doing a lot of the work related to being organized in my head. I was remembering in my head that I had to do something. So I found that I was doing everything about three times with about three times as much energy as it really took to perform tasks. And it was at that point where I recognized that things could be streamlined.
And how did that affect your ability to manage projects?
Again, it was expending more effort than was required. It diminished the ability to do things, and it took away from the opportunity to be able to think about the really challenging aspects of projects, to really be insightful about defining risk, and to do some of the more complicated tasks in relation to managing a project. And
was there any particular moment when you had an epiphany that you said, okay, something has to change?
It had to be the stress that was related to doing work made me realize I needed a change. I worked for a medical device manufacturer, and our entire business changed one afternoon when we found that our product had to be completely redesigned in order to meet Medicare reimbursement code. And so suddenly my life just changed, and there were many projects that just started, and it was all hands on deck. These projects were very important, or else there was no company anymore. And so I didn't have the time to take three times as long to do everything. Everything had to be done at razor sharp and very quickly. And so it was at that time I realized I needed as much help as I could get in being as economical as possible in the work that I did. And so it was then that I realized that something needed to change.
And what did you do to change things?
Well, I started to follow some of the habits of people I admired. There were a few people along the way that I noticed that they were stone cold professionals. I would say that the CEO that was at the company I was working at the time, I noticed that anytime you told him anything, he always took a note about it, and it always looked the same. Anytime he gave you feedback on document, he was always using the same sort of editorial notes. And he seemed, I love the term about being a stone cold professional. So I started to follow those habits, and then I started to do some research, about other habits, about other things that people who are smarter than I am were doing. I looked for other voices, and I just made the decision to take ownership of my own productivity.
And then at some point you came across getting things done, right? How did you get to know getting things done, the methodology, the approach?
Well, getting things done has kind of a cult following. I think that the people that are into it really enjoy being into it. And how did I first find out about it? I believe that it was when I found something on the internet called the Hipster PDA. I was speaking with one of the graphic designers at a place that I was working, and we talked about the Hipster PDA, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke that the Hipster PDA was just a series of about 25 index cards held together by a binder clip. And it was kind of the anti-smartphone, instead of carrying around your BlackBerry. This was before iPhones, but instead of carrying around your BlackBerry or your Palm, you carry around the Hipster PDA. And the Hipster PDA was the creation of there's a website called 43 Folders that's run by a fella named Merlin Mann, and he's real clever and funny, and he's a big GTD proponent. And it was when I saw the Hipster PDA and I saw the 43 Folders site and I saw him and his users and his readers comments about GTD is when I really got into that process. It got me hooked.
And while GTD, getting things done, worked for you, we want to make it clear here, the interview, while we will be talking about it going forward, it's not really about getting things done. It's more about the approach that you have chosen and that you recommend other project managers choose as well. What other approaches similar to getting things done could people be using?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I agree that for me, the genesis of this conversation is that I believe it's wise for a project manager to have their own repeatable method for being productive. For me, it happens to be GTD, and that's a kind of a hip method, and I believe there's other people that like it, but that's not the only one that's out there. But it is the one that I use, so I had to kind of do a little bit of research. So I did some Googling to see what else is out there. You know, the first one that I think many of the people that are listening will come to mind is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That book, you could almost say that's responsible for the boom in office productivity. But those are habits of highly effective people, and it's not necessarily a methodology, but that's certainly another input to look at for your own personal method. Something that might be familiar to you and your listeners as well. The other one is the Pomodoro method of it's a timing mechanism that allows people to. It doesn't allow them to. Matter of fact, it gives them a structure of performing their work in short 25-minute segments during the day. It's almost like something that someone who's in training to be a runner would use. You know, you work for 25 minutes straight, take 5 minutes break. Work for another 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. And the idea is that I think Pomodoro is Italian for something like a tomato. It's like those are little sections of your day is 8 tomatoes long, and that method is a way that some people have used to be productive. There's another one out there that's called the action method, and that one is geared very much towards creative people. It offers many of the same promises of getting things done. What I read about that method is that they focus on performing action rather than simply organizing a bunch of to-do lists. And the idea that they focused on action was one that was very, very attractive to me. But again, I think that the most important thing for a project manager to keep in mind is that they have a strategy for taking in information and a personal approach for how they manage all these tasks that they need to perform.
And as you were mentioning all these other methodologies and approaches, I just remembered, I hadn't thought of this in many years, about 10, 12 years ago when I was working in Europe, I used a system called Time System. Mm-hmm. I believe it's out of Denmark, and it's a means, at the time then it was mostly on paper and pencil, and they gave you a nice little binder with it, and it was a really good way of keeping track of everything and very well organized. So pretty much in the physical world, that's what I used at the time. Then I'm sure Time System has evolved in the meantime, and it's now probably 100% electronic if it's still around. Anyway, so yes, this is more about productivity and personal organization than it is about the methodology itself. Now, let's move on. We've heard how bad you were, so to speak, in the beginning in regards to your own personal organization and productivity. How are you dealing with your day-to-day tasks today?
Well, I'm much more confident than I was a number of years back. I don't want to sell myself short. I found that I was able to get most things done, but there's I'm able to worry about things that you really need to worry about more than worrying about a stray phone number that I find on my desk. I find that there is that I've been able to employ the kind of the stress-free productivity part of it, so that I'm able to spend some interesting parts of my day thinking about some more interesting problems. I think it's liberating.
Why do you feel that it's working for you? How can you tell that it's working for you? Do you have some examples for us?
It's become a part of my life in that, when I wake up, I have a couple of things that that I like to do, and exercise and spend time with my family, and then the next thing that'll happen is as I check my task lists, and it's reassuring knowing that that I've collected all the information that I have onto that task list, and that there's when you're fully bought into the system and that there's nothing out there that you've forgotten about. It's very liberating. There's plenty of negotiating your deadlines. Doesn't necessarily mean that I have done everything I want to do, but knowing that everything is that there's a safety net for just about everything that I need to do is it gives me confidence, and I think that it helps me give the stakeholders in my projects confidence too, because that they know that nothing's going to get by me.
All right. There's something that I just thought of, and that is, how long did it take you to go from, well, shall we say, zero to hero?
Well, it kind of took a while. You can start employing some of the GTD methods almost instantly, but to really collect all of the author of the book is a fellow named David Allen, and he calls all the things that are undone in your life, the things that aren't in the place that you want them to be, he calls them open loops. And so for me to actually be able to collect all of my open loops, man, it was probably 2 years after I really started the reading about this that I was able to really buy into the system and to really use it to its fullest. Now, that's not to say that I wasn't getting benefits of it, right off the bat, but it was, it took a while to really become invested in the system. But that's the thing is that once I did, I think that's when I started having the most success with it.
Mm-hmm. So if I hear you right, this takes self-discipline. It takes time to fully get to the point where you are, but as you start out with such an approach for improved productivity and personal organization, you should see benefits almost instantaneously. Does that sum it up?
I think so. There's articles that you can read about this method that will give you information that you could start employing tomorrow. Then there's the abridged version of the audio book, 2 hours long, and that would give you some more information. And it's something that can be adopted incrementally, and would be beneficial.
All right. After all that we've heard, I have a somewhat rhetorical question for you, but let's go there anyway. Why do you feel that other project managers need to embark on this journey as well?
Well, there's, we have a lot of instruction about the processes that we should undergo, and PMI does a terrific job of covering just about all of the bases for managing a project, but it's there seems to be a gap. And it's not exclusive to to project management, but you'll see it for many professionals. Is there's that gap from being a high school or a college student to being a professional, where you're expected to have your act together. You're supposed to know how to take notes. You're supposed to be organized. And you're smart, right? So you can, so you're organized. You're not going to forget everything. But no one, it's infrequent that you get training on and any guidance on how to keep track of all this stuff. And there is much more information that we have to take in now, socially, professionally, than there was in the past. And so I think it's valuable for project managers because it fills that gap in between being a smart, knowledgeable person and being a project management professional. It gives someone the foundation to perform the tasks that are prescribed by some of the governing bodies of project management.
And how can people start identifying tasks that are slipping through the cracks to begin realizing, okay, something has to change here as well?
The book has a really good example he uses, and what he recommends is that somebody is think about something that's been bugging you. Think about a project that has been bugging you. Maybe it's been running for a long time. Maybe it's overdue, and it could be something. It could be something personal. It could be something professional. Probably for our conversation, it might be wise for one of the listeners to think of something professional that isn't in the place that they want it to be, and to think about what would be the very next action that it would take to get that done. Very often, the next action is something very simple, but that since you're looking at the problem in a larger from a larger view, that you don't recognize it. Say you need to speak to you need to speak to a stakeholder about some requirements. So it's like what's the very next thing that you would need to do? You think, okay, you need to call that stakeholder. Well, do you have that stakeholder's phone number? No, you don't have the phone number. So the next thing you need to do is look up that stakeholder's phone number. And so when you have so you've identified the very next action, and that there is some sort of relief in once you've identified what that next action is. And so, how does a project manager start identifying things that are slipping through the cracks? Is to start performing that exercise over and over again. Is there anything that's overdue in your project? What would be the next action it would take to get it done? And I think people will see that some of the problems or some of the things that are bugging them can be moved along if you break it down into next action thinking.
Most project managers, they have a methodology that they follow, maybe prescribed from their company or something, that if they are a sole project manager, they came up with themselves and they think, I'm good. I'm there. I don't need this. Are there any questions that people can ask themselves to identify whether, they're really good or whether they need to consider going into this direction?
Let's see. Well, questions they can ask themselves. I think, a lot of times you can ask others around you, ask your coworkers and ask your wife, does it seem like there's anything that's bothering me, and a lot of times the other people in your life will have the answer to that. But, you can be retrospective about it. You can, as you're looking back on some projects that you've completed, you can see, what could have been improved about that project. And is there anything that I could have done better? I think every time we ever perform a project, there's something that we could do a little bit better. And so if project manager looks at that and sees that there's an opportunity to do things a little more organized, then that might be a trigger that they could use a methodology of their own.
All right. So we've already identified it took you roughly 2 years to really fully adopt and embrace the system. However, benefits are there right from the start. Other people, it may take them less or more time, depending. But how do you know that you're there? How do you know that you have arrived at a better place? Or maybe how did you know that you had arrived at a better place?
I believe it's the confident feeling that everything is being taken care of, and everything's in the right place, and that it's not. The little things aren't bothering you anymore. That it's anybody who who can become a professional project manager is probably talented enough to get this done. Is to get the things done in their lives that they need to. But it might eat at them more than it has to. It might be more stressful getting things done than it has to be. So I believe that when you are able to have this kind of focus and this kind of success getting things done without a lot of stress, that's when you'll know that you're there.
Okay. Our goal was to get people to that point, to show them that, an improved approach for productivity and personal organization will not only help you and get you more stress-free, it will also improve your projects in the end. So let's, in closing here, let's help our listeners to take some action out there. What would you say are the telltale signs that they can look out for that they really should do something?
Well, let's see. It's if you feel overwhelmed, I think that might be a telltale sign. I mean, you might straight up be overwhelmed, and many of us are. But if you if you feel overwhelmed, that's a hint that you might need help. And again, asking your coworkers and your friends and your wife, do you seem like you are, getting things done and as well as you can? Is it showing on your face that you're overwhelmed? That's an easy way to identify that you might need some other sort of method to getting things done.
All right, and then you mentioned in the getting things done method, one of the approaches is let's talk about the next step. I'd like to expand this a bit. So if somebody sees, okay, I have the telltale signs, I want to change something, what are the next 3 steps that you suggest that they take tomorrow in order to get them set straight on this path?
Well, that's a good question, and that's in the method of getting things done. This approach of kind of identifying a few next steps is he defines it as outcome thinking. Let's think about the positive outcome. What is this thing going to look like when it's done, when it's successful? So to the positive outcome here, and for your listeners, would be to engage in stress-free productivity. So 3 steps that could be taken is to evaluate your personal situation. To ask yourself, do you have ownership of the information that you take in, and do you have a strategy for handling that information? Maybe pose a scenario to yourself, or review an interaction that you've had, maybe between yourself and a stakeholder or a team member, and what would you do if that happened again? Next, I would say then would be to try to be able to visualize and illustrate your strategy for being a professional. If someone were to ask you, how do you handle information? How do you handle your organization? How would you answer that question? When you get information, what do you do? After a meeting, what do you do? When you're on a clock and it's time to work, say it's 10:30 on Wednesday, what do you choose to do? And do you have a method for doing that? Then I would say, third, if there's a gap that you can see, if after maybe performing those 2 first exercises, if you see a gap, then I would recommend trying to address it. You see that certain things fall through the cracks, or you see that, after meetings that you're not able to clearly define what should happen after a meeting, or if you see a gap, try to address it. And for me, the getting things done method has worked. At the very least, I think that method would give your listeners and other project managers a few leads on how to proceed and how to develop a system that works for them.
Brian, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, Cornelius. I appreciate the opportunity.
And that was Brian Fee and our discussion on how improved personal productivity and organization will lead to improved project performance. Are you PMP certified and you want to earn 37 PDUs quickly and for less than $5 per PDU? That's no problem with the Agile Prepcast. It not only prepares you for your PMI ACP exam, but also qualifies for a ton of PDUs. Log on to agileprepcast.com/PDU for the details. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have the following saying from Arthur Bloch. If your project doesn't work, then look for the part that you didn't think was important. Until next time.